Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting of Spennymoor Town Council. We will be adjourning the meeting at precisely 7 o'clock to hold the annual Towns meeting, and then we'll reconvene afterwards. The first item on the agenda tonight is apologies.
Councillors Marr, Parkin, Mrs. K. Thompson.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. No? Thank you. Item number 3 is public questions, and we do have a public question tonight from Mr. Lytell. Is he present? Would you like to put your question, Mr. Lytell?
All right.
Yep.
It's Spennymoor Town Council. In towns and villages within the Durham County Council area which don't have a town or parish council, the residents pay the basic amount of council tax, which is known as the unparished area council tax. An example of such an area is Crook. In Crook, services such as allotments, town park, open spaces, cemeteries, community halls, etc. are paid for by Durham County Council from the residents' unparished area council statements. This is a breakdown of the council tax levied on the people of Crook and other non-parished areas and the amounts paid by the people of Spennymoor area for the financial year 2014 to 2015. I'll not bore you with all of those figures, they're on the agenda, but it does represent that Spennymoor people pay 13.09% more than people of Crook and other unparished areas, which is laid out in the next sentence. The annual Spennymoor Town Council budget is just over £1.2 million, most of which comes from the 13.09 increase paid by the people of Spennymoor over and above the basic Durham County Council tax. What do the people of Spennymoor and I get from Spennymoor Town Council for this extra 1.2 billion extra cost that we wouldn't get from Durham County Council if Spennymoor Town Council didn't exist?
Thank you, Mr. Lytell. I'll ask the Town Clerk to reply to that.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Mr. Lytell. It's a long question, it'll be a long answer, but I will commit it to writing to you. You may be fortunate in that you've had the heads of 2 town clerks looking at this, because my husband, very recently, was the local council's rep in relation to advising on matters concerning double taxation. In order to respond fully to the question, it is necessary to first of all consider the history of the transfer of services to town and parish councils in County Durham by the former district councils prior to the creation of the single unitary council for County Durham in 2009. The former district councils in County Durham had different policies with regard to both the full parishing of their area and the consequent transfer of services to town and parish councils on the concurrent functions. The area of Sedgefield Borough Council was fully parished, and the Borough Council agreed to the transfer of mainstream services such as cemeteries, public parks, etc. to the town and parish councils in the area, whereas the area of Weir Valley District Council was not fully parished. I.e., to quote your example, there is no parish council for Crook, and even where the area was parished, the district council determined not to transfer the same level of services to the parish areas as those agreed by Sedgefield Borough Council. Of course, prior to local government reorganisation, in terms of the council tax levied in either of the 2 areas, this did not create any major issues. However, following local government reorganisation in County Durham and the creation of the single unitary authority, this caused a mismatch of responsibility for service delivery in different areas of the county. In the Spennymoor area, the town council is responsible for cemeteries, but in Crook, the responsibility lies with the county council. The cost of the cemeteries in Spennymoor is borne by the Town Council and paid for via the precept levied by the Town Council, which, as you quite rightly point out, results in higher council tax being paid by the residents of Spennymoor. The cost of the cemetery in Crug is borne by the County Council and forms part of the basic amount of council tax levied by the County Council across the whole of the county area. It must be appreciated, therefore, in the example of cemetery provision quoted, the residents of Spennymoor pay through their council tax for the full cost of cemetery provision in Spennymoor, but also make a contribution towards the cost of county council managed cemetery provision elsewhere in the county, i.e. in Crug. This is commonly known as double taxation. The problem was recognised on local government reorganisation, and in the early years a grant, albeit a relatively small grant, was paid by the County Council to the affected town and parish councils in recognition of the double taxation issue. However, as a result of the cuts in expenditure needed to be made by the County Council as a consequence of the central government imposed austerity measures, this grant is no longer paid. Therefore, as can be seen from the above, the responsibility for service provision between the County Council and the town and parish councils throughout the county area and the consequent effect on the levels of council tax paid in parished and unparished areas is more complex than you might originally have thought. The specific question that you put is, what do the people of Spennymoor and you, yourself, get from Spennymoor Town Council for the 1.2 million extra cost that we wouldn't get from Durham County Council if Spennymoor Town Council didn't exist? This question presupposes that if Spennymoor Town Council didn't exist or ceased to exist, that the County Council would simply continue to provide the following services which we, the Town Council, currently provide. And the Town Council provide the following services. In relation to parks and open spaces, we provide Jubilee Park, it's 4.64 acres of recreation grounds, 2 bowling greens, 3 tennis courts, 2 all-weather pitches, the bowling pavilion, changing rooms, showers, public toilets, crazy golf, a Victorian bandstand, picnic areas, flowers, beds, swings, roundabouts, play areas, CCTV to protect them, a toddler facility in open spaces, a sensory garden. We look after 3 village greens and Byers Green, Kirkmerrington and Tudor Village, 8 football pitches, and 2 national award-winning cemeteries in Spennymoor and Tudor. We provide the Cow Plantation Nature Reserve, bus shelters throughout the town, public seating, litter bins, the dog bins and dog toilet facilities. We also provide cricket pitches and pavilions at Tudor and Spennymoor. The Town Council own Tudor Cricket Field and Spennymoor Cricket Field. We also own and provide the FA-approved football field at Spennymoor Brewery Field, that's occupied by Spennymoor Town Football Club. In addition to that, in relation to allotments, we're the biggest allotment authority in the country. We provide allotments on 19 sites. We provide the perimeter and security fencing on those sites, security, water. We provide an annual allotment competition, provision of the community garden, and in connection with allotments, we also run the Town Council's annual town show and free family fun day. In relation to financial matters, we make provision in our Section 137 budget to make small grants to the benefit of the community. We manage and provide this town hall, its catering and bar service, which provides multi-uses for the town, shops and offices and administrative services, which is an essential position, and we like to believe that we provide very high quality catering and bar service at a competitive price. Question that you asked asked is, would that, what was presented was, is the likelihood that that current extensive list of services which we provide likely to be provided by the County Council if Spennymoor Town Council did not exist? And I've got to say, I'm afraid that the chances of that happening are very remote indeed. The total of the parish precepts levied by the Town and Parish Councils on Durham County Council for 2015-16 is £10.9 million. And as the County Council is required to find further expenditure reductions of £87.6 million in the period 15-16 to 17-18, based upon its current budget, it is almost impossible to believe that if the Town and Parish Council ceased to exist, the current level of services in this community could be provided and would continue. In addition, it is important to also consider the following benefits that accrue to the local community in Spennymoor as a result of the existence of a Town and Parish Council. By having a Parish Council, there is access to a local authority which is close to the community. We are the first point of contact for local people with local concerns and ideas. You have access to a strong representative voice on behalf of the community and the ability to advise and influence other local service providers. You have a local service provider that is here to meet the specific local needs. It's funded locally, and we are totally accountable to the local community. One of the main priorities of the people of the town is town centre regeneration, and in that respect, the shops owned by the Town Council are some of the most successful in the town. The Bob Apley Art Gallery and Durham Mining Museum, both hosted by the Town Council, receive international visits every year and have increased the overall external footfall to the town centre. The Office of Mayor provides a sense of community well-being with hundreds of well-received school, wedding, anniversary and milestone birthday visits included throughout the year. We host civic events such as the annual fireworks display, our town show, Santa's Grotto, and we give significant support financially and practically to the annual town gala and the Remembrance Day parade. As I said earlier, we provide £20,000 in funding to local community groups and projects through Section 137 grants. This money wouldn't be available without the Town Council. Not a lot of people know this, but we also have a 1/5 shareholding in Durham Crematorium that provides us with a very good income stream. Durham Crematorium is managed by a joint committee comprising of members of the Town Council and Durham County Council, and that crematorium is ranked as 7th finest in the country. So it's obvious that this is really quite a very complex matter, and one that's been partly brought about by the different policies in the past adopted by former district and borough councils. And this has been inherited by the new unitary council. But I believe that in the current climate of austerity and the financial restraints that have been imposed upon principal authorities such as Durham County Council, the value to the local community of an efficient and effective local service provider such as the Town Council will certainly be enhanced rather than diminished. That's the end of the question, just at the 7 o'clock chance.
At this point, we adjourn the meeting and convene the annual Spennymoor Towns meeting, and we return to the normal council meeting. Mr. Lytle, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
I'd like to respond to what I've heard and thank Spennymoor Town Council for hearing my letter in question, to the Town Clerk for her response on behalf the Town Council, even if it was really a long response. The Durham City has a trust. Crook, Concert, Chester Street are all on the parish council area and pay the basic amount of tax. They all have wonderful parks. They all aren't complaining about their state of affairs. Spennymoor Town Council came into being when Spennymoor UDC, Urban District Council, ceased and became part of Sedgefield District, later known as Sedgefield Borough Council. As the people you represent were not given the opportunity to have a vote as to whether they did or did not want a town council, along with the extra cost that incurs, will you now pay the people of this area the same courtesy afforded to the electorate of Crook and Durham City by voluntarily arranging a referendum, and will you agree to abide by the result, asking the people you represent if they want Spennymoor Town Council to continue or cease? In that way, we can have an open, fair and democratic debate as to the merits of having or not having a town council.
Was that a question that you asked there? Sorry, I got a bit caught up in the preamble. What was the question? Sorry.
The question was, will you pay people of Spennymoor the same courtesy afforded to the electorate of Crook and Durham City by voluntarily arranging a referendum, and will you agree to abide by the result of that referendum, asking the people you represent if they want Spennymoor Town Council to continue or cease?
Town Clerk, would you like to reply?
I think you might be, I'm not quite sure whether you're actually asking that as a question of the Town Council or whether that was something you wanted to raise in the context of the annual town meeting, because if you're requesting a parish poll in relation to whether or not the Town Council exists, then that would be something that you should have raised at the annual town meeting.
Well, it's a follow-on subsequent question to what we were talking about, the fact that the people of Spennymoor have never been asked if they want a town council. It was enforced upon them when Spennymoor Urban District Council ceased to exist and Sedgefield District Council came into being. Durham City and Crook, in 2011 there was a report brought by Durham County Council and implemented sometime the year afterwards, asking those people by referendum if they wanted to have town and city councils. They both voted no, and that's why they still have none. I just want the people of Spennymoor to be afforded the same courtesy. I have no idea whether they think it's a great thing or not a great thing. We've never been asked. That's not democratic.
Right.
Would you like to respond, Town Clerk?
If I may, yes. I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking. If you're asking whether or not the council would have a referendum as to whether or not the town council should exist, that will be a matter that you would have to take up through the community governance review route through Durham County Council. If you were asking that we would have a parish poll here tonight in relation to that, then that question should have been put as part of the town's meeting. I've got to say as well that if that's what you did intend to do, we'd have had to adjourn the annual town meeting anyway, because to have a parish poll, I've got to be satisfied that the people who are asking for the parish poll are all members of the community and registered on the electoral register. So I think I know where you're coming from, but the route that you need to take in relation to the question you're putting is actually to ask for a community governance review, and that will be done through the county council. I've got to say though that if that happens, and it's actually prescribed in law that I tell you this, if that's what you want to do, then the cost of that would be the same as an all-out parish election, and that would be borne by yourselves as ratepayers. And you need a number of signatures in order to do that. So I think the question you're asking really requires you to go away and look up the provisions with regard to what you need to do to trigger a community governance review.
I know about that, but I'm asking this council to do it for the people that they represent, period. The people of Crook and the people of Durham City didn't pay for those votes. They didn't pay the fees. They're listed in the county records.
Thank you, Mr. Lantel. I think we've aired that sufficiently. And I propose to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is minutes. To submit and if approved confirms the correct record the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Town Council held on the 24th of February 2015.
Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, ladies and gentlemen, can I request a slight correction in the minutes that for minute 117/14 for the Cricket Club that it reads the recommendations contained in the report be agreed and implemented, and with that correction can I move that the minutes are accepted as a correct record of the meeting? Second those minutes, Mr. Chair.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. I think at this stage I would like to move on to item number 10, the presentation by Catherine Richardson on behalf of the Prevention of Young Suicide Charity.
Is very much a community approach. What we do know now, I'll show you some of the data, is only around 40% of people potentially come into contact with any services. So what we're trying to get over is a much more of an understanding approach within the community. 3 of the areas serve suicide communities, and we're working with our area action partnerships and a lot of the organisations at a community level to make sure that we've got suicide prevention plans locally. Depression is one of the key areas, so it doesn't tend to be secondary mental health issues. It's clearly bipolar that you tend to associate with people taking. It's much more around depression, bereavement. But people who have been bereaved by suicide are more at risk of also taking their own lives. So that suicide post-vention support is also key. So there's three elements to the suicide safe communities. So this is 2006 to 2012. 2006, 2005, 2012. So you can see our suicide, this is numbers. Our rates in County Durham are around 13 deaths per 100,000. So we've got a significantly higher rate of deaths within County Durham. But what we can see is times, I suppose, of austerity. We've already mentioned some of the economic situations, and we're seeing that across the country. But we're also seeing that our suicide rates are almost double to what they were 5 years ago. I think what we're also also see within County Durham, which is different to the national picture, is that nationally our highest group of males, probably in the 40s, 40 to 49-year-old. And what we're seeing within County Durham is a younger age group coming through, so 20 to 29-year-olds are our equivalent higher numbers. Some of the characteristics, so again taking it away from mental health services, so how can we get to individuals to be able to support them better? So 59% of those individuals over a 6-year period that we've looked at would have a mental health problem. Self-harm is a key element to that as well. So if people are presenting with self-harm, then that's a key indicator. 20% significant alcohol intake, drug users, and the criminal justice system is another key partner that we need to engage with to ensure that when somebody does present to us in distress, actually that's the contact that we need to make sure that we get into services and support. Out of the deaths that we looked at, around 44% had seen a GP within 3 months prior to death. But in a lot of cases, that was about their physical health, not about their mental health. And again, I suppose that's much more of a men, and predominantly men in their audience and you. But men are more at risk to communicate issues differently, and maybe some of the emotional issues do come through much more as a physical health problem. The individuals that were based in mental health services, like I said, the majority of these people who take normalised aren't in secondary mental health services. So around 37% were in secondary mental health services, and that gives us a better idea of our target group, if you like. So people who are employed, living alone, single, engaged with the criminal justice system, and alcohol and drug misuse again comes through as our high risks. Done some work around triggers, and they're very complex and can be quite multiple. But essentially, if you imagine, I suppose, the wood coming out, so it can be a multitude. Yes, mental health problems, family relationship breakdown, job loss, financial problems, and almost you can see that coming round. Bereavement is another key risk factor. If I had, I suppose, that bottomless pit of funding, the 3 areas I would be investing in the relationship support, getting people into understanding their breakdown in relationships, now to cope with it better. Bereavement support and some financial support in light of the economic situation that we're in. And that's our percentage breakdown. But like I said, in lots of cases it's a multiple trigger factors. These are shed. And we brought in the SHEDS programme, or the pre-programming, back in 2010, so you've got some SHEDS RPs in your area too. The SHEDS programme is based on an Australian model of bringing guys together around a wood-burning stove, so it's very much, I suppose that's what it was, irrespective of the activity. Some are making walking sticks and carving grandfather clocks, but the reason that they're there is to be with other guys, to share problems, and to bond. The sheds in total now we've got 42 across County Durham. They've been very successful. The only other area that's been successful is Southern Ireland, so we're lucky we've got these. And in some cases they're not sheds, some cases in community centres, they're one-stop shops, wherever we go. We've also got 11 women's sheds, which wasn't our intention to start with. But that was very much the request of women. And we've also got 5 people sheds that were piloting at the minute, because obviously we've got a younger age group that's coming through as well. So we're looking at suicide-safe communities. It's an evidence-based model from Canada, and our suicide prevention training is based on a model to assist training. I don't know if anybody's been on this. Works around that a community holds their own action plan. So instead of us coming in at a county-wide level after a death or after a cluster of deaths, in order to put some prevention mechanisms in place, what I'm hoping for is that each community holds their own plans. You understand your own services, you understand where your own communities are and what your investment is. But you would hold your own community response plan and suicide prevention plan. But in order to support you with that, there's the leadership element at a county-wide level from the investment from the clinical commissioning groups and from public health. There's an action plan, like I said, that we would launch towards September, which is World Suicide Prevention Day. So these are the criteria to gain our suicide-safe communities. The other area is gatekeeper training. So as part of the SHEDS model, what we've rolled with is suicide prevention champions. Those people who run the sheds are trained up in suicide prevention, mental health, first aid. The suicide bereavement I've already mentioned, which is for those individuals who are already bereaved by suicide are at 50% higher risk than others. And the mental health promotion. Obviously, but us building resilience in schools and the younger age groups key to make sure that we have people who can bounce back after a fall, if you like, for some of those risk factors. So we're rolling with Relaxed Kids, Mindfulness, you might have seen, and .B, which is some of the building resilience programs that we've got in place. The gatekeeper training, and I've done this by AP area, but essentially we're looking at around about 2 community or suicide prevention champions that we're trying to recruit for every 10,000 population. So I've done some very quick figures around that. But again, you'll know your own population, whether you've got a village that you feel that would be benefit from the gatekeeper training. The training is provided free, the coordination is provided free, and that those individuals will be supported through Mind, because obviously those are, volunteer roles within the community, and they take on people's problems also, so we support those children. There's a checklist. There's a checklist, and we've built it into the Health and Wellbeing Board strategies, because obviously suicide prevention is one of our key targets over the next few years. Unfortunately, within County Durham, we're the second highest within England for suicides. We just sit behind Blackpool. And that's for a multitude of reasons I've already alluded to: job loss, the economic situation we found ourselves in. But across the country, the suicide rate's doubled. Each death equates to about 1.5 million within the local community. So it's a significant cost over a time period for the death of suicide. Thank you very much.
Any questions? You've put in figures for 2012. Have you got any latest figures?
Yeah, there's a delay certainly with the coroner's verdicts, but I think we were at 58 for 2013, and we're not far behind it for 2014, but of course we haven't got all the verdicts through yet. Yeah.
And the other question I would like to know is on the bereavement support. How is it triggered? What happens to the families who are affected?
Yeah.
How do you
get the services there? We're one of the few areas within the UK that's got a suicide early alert system. So most people wait for the coroner's verdicts to come through, which could be 9 months down the line, 6 to 9 months down the line. We have a referral straight from the police officer. So when the police officer visits a scene, they ask the family for consent to be referred through, and that comes through. We signpost a Hugh Care Share, which is our local provider.
Any more questions? Andrew, just, are there any children you can get a copy of the slides?
Yes, Harley.
We've got means of getting them, because I think, I know it's difficult in you, it's new all the same, but you can't see it very much. It would be nice to get it, if it's possible, it's been very interesting, so to take it all in, I think that would be.
Yeah, and I can certainly do a breakdown for your area, I suppose, so you understand some of the priority things within your area, because this is obviously county-wide.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think you said that 44% of the suicide had some contact with the GP, but for medical reasons rather than mental. Is there something you're doing there to make the GPs more aware? Because that's a significant proportion of the people. Are you working with the GPs to make them more aware?
Yeah, we are. I mean, the GPs, are, you know, well, you'll all know the situation, you know, you get that 10-minute appointment and that's the, you know, that's their remit, I suppose. We're doing a lot of training with the GPs so that they recognise the signs, but in some cases, is there any signs? And it's quite complex when they come in with physical conditions.
It's difficult, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I think some GPs are obviously better than others in the way that, you know, they identify people at risk. I know Newton Aycliffe have recently, because they're under Dalesbury, Sedgefield, as you are, CCG area, have commissioned in some services which is a suicide prevention psychiatric nurses within practices, so they don't have to go into secondary services, and you might have seen some of that in the news recently, but they've managed to get that from it seems to be going well.
Councillor Foster.
When you go through your, you mentioned the clusters, so I wonder if there was a geographic cluster or an age group cluster, whether you broke down between ages and information, this is maybe one inclined to do it as well. But in terms of an age, if you like, to the point, in the person's age where it's more likely.
Yeah, certainly the 40 to 49-year-olds are, you know, across the country they're the highest group. But what we are seeing in Durham is that our profile, if you like, for males at 40 to 49-year-olds is the same now for 20 to 29-year-olds. Right. So we're level on those two age bands.
And in a geographic, is there areas of the town which is more likely to happen
than others? Yeah. Historically it was Easington. And Easington, we've come down significantly in Easington now. It's probably Durham side and Durham, certainly over 2014. But what we're seeing in the DDES area is much more of a younger age group. So certainly maybe under 25s, maybe 16 to 25-year-olds.
Councillor Taylor.
I noticed earlier you referred to the cases that have been considered, but I think you answered that when you said it comes from another place. But so family want to find it too intrusive, then they aren't looked at the same.
Yeah, I mean what we're trying to do is get the GPs to follow up probably with a letter maybe 4 weeks later, just say these are support services. We've got crews as well, so if you care share, and obviously people, you know, probably would say, no, that isn't a death, it isn't suicide, or, you know, they've died in other ways. And until you get that verdict through, so there's crews bereavement on this if you care share.
So actually results could be a considerable time.
Yeah, the coroner's trying to turn around in 6 months. I think they've got a new target, so we are getting them through quicker. But even so, when you're bereaved, 6 months is a long time. I think they'd like to get services in significantly quicker.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
Carry on with item number 5 on the agenda, which is the Mayor's communications, and I have nothing additional to add to that. Item number 6 is the committee minutes to receive and approve as a correct record minutes of the meetings of the undermentioned standing committees of the council. The first being the allotments committee, pages 4 to 5.
Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to move the minutes of the allotment meeting held on the 3rd of March as a true and correct record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Secondly, the Finance and General Purposes Committee, pages 6 to 8.
Mayor, councillors, members of the public, I would like to move the minutes of the Finance and General Purpose Committee,
held on the 3rd of March is a true record with the following alterations, which is under 135/14 financial assistance, visitors from Portugal, that the word some should read come.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. Thirdly, the Planning and Highways Committee, pages 9 to 10.
Mayor, fellow councillors, members of the public, I would like to move the minutes of the Planning and Highways Committee meeting held on Tuesday the 10th of March as a true record.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. And fourthly, the Services and Amenities Committee, pages 11 to 12.
Mr Mayor, fellow councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to move the minutes of the Services and Amenities Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 10th of March 2015 as a true and correct record.
All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 7 is the Performance Management Action Plan. Members are requested to receive the schedule referring to decisions taken at meetings held in March.
Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I move that the Performance Management Action Plan for meetings held in March is accepted.
Second that, Mr. Mayor. All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 8 is correspondence. Item number 1 is land at Byers Green. Members are asked to consider the enclosed correspondence from Smith's Gore in relation to 2 parcels of land currently rented by the Town Council. As the football pitch at Byers Green is currently not being used and the changing room facilities have been mothballed, members may wish to consider the validity of continuing to rent the land in question. Councillor Gelder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important that we know our options regarding the possible future use of these pieces of land. It may be wise for the council to seek to purchase the allotment land that we have to date leased from the Church Commissioners. It might also be sensible to explore the release of our lease on the football pitch as it's no longer used. In that vein, can I move that the council request a full report of our options by H&H valuers to be discussed at the next possible meeting.
Councillor Thompson.
Because of similar happened in Winchester allotments, where I think apparently they've already been told that allotments would be sold off, people from Byers Green have contacted me, and there is a concern, and so I agree with what Councillor Gellard said. We should be, well, no, I think Councillor Gellard said that on the football field we should release it. I think we should have some consultation on Byers Green. They may not be being used at present, but most fields have the time. I mean, for instance, now we're resting a pitch, but maybe handy to have it to rest pitches. With regards to the allotment, I tried to have a word with the Town Clerk, and she, because of the interest rate, she wasn't able to complete the conversation. I'd like it said, just for the sake of my colleagues, where it says, please rest assured that the property you currently rent will be sold subject to your current agreement, and the terms of your agreement will remain the same. Now that can either be sort of all sorts of devils in it, or it might be straightforward. But the people at Byers Green would like to know what it stands for.
So, sorry, Councillor Gelder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to come back on one part of Councillor Thompson, he said there that it was my idea that we should be getting rid of the lease on the football pitch. I didn't say that. I said we should be exploring whether that was a sensible option.
Chair, I was hoping...
You've got an amendment.
I was hoping the Town Clerk was just going to explain that paragraph to me.
I think I'm happy to do that. I think in the fullness of time when the report prepared, you'll see the situation. Effectively what that means is, unfortunately I couldn't actually locate the file on this matter. The lease in question will be in the strong room. I know exactly what we're paying in terms of rental for each piece of land, but from memory we are lease the land on the understanding that it's used for no other purposes services other than allotments, and there's restrictions around the keeping of anything other than hens and rabbits. And I think there's a rent review provision every 5 years or every 3 years. There's recently been a rent review. So what they're effectively saying is the land would be sold to a new landlord if it was sold and we didn't decide we wanted to buy it with the town council as sitting tenants. And the terms of the tenancy, the lease that we've got will continue with provision for rent review, which is already set out in there. And I think it's on a 5-year basis. It's not that long since we had a rent review.
I just ask a provision question through you, Chair. The thing that's been asking me, and I'm sorry to be pedantic, but you do know I've asked a question over the last few days, and you've got to put that maybe read back on that and get it straight forward. So that's why I'm sort of asking this question. The new owner, I mean, is that for life? A new owner can't come on and then in 4 or 5 years' time throw us off? Can you put a time on that the allotments will belong to a new owner, but because of the current system of rent and what have you, we will still be able to rent it, and that the allotment people down by Spring can rest assured that they won't be thrown off?
The statutory allotments now for the length of time that they've been allotments, so they've got all the protection in the Allotments Act, so they would remain allotments unless the person who buys them, whoever that may be, could get some sort of consent to have them disposed of. But it's very difficult to get ministerial consent to dispose of allotment land unless there was absolutely no demand for them, where there clearly is. So I don't think that there needs to be a concern of the people of Byers Green that they're going to lose their allotments. You know, I mean, they're saying that if they sell it, it will be sold with us as sitting tenants. We lease it, then we sublet it as allotment land. It's always been allotments, so it's got all statutory protection because it's allotment land. I wouldn't think that would be a concern, but I think what needs to happen is we need to report that, and the best thing to do is to get somebody else to look into it.
Which is what Councillor Gelder proposed. It's been seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much. The second item of the correspondence refers to the Clyde Terrace allotments. Members are asked to give consideration to the attached correspondence from Mr. T. Shaw on behalf of the Clyde Terrace Allotment Association.
Move the recommendation.
Second that recommendation, Chair.
All those in favour? Thank you. Item number 9 is the Youth Council and investing in children. Members are requested to consider the report by the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've recently met with officers of Success North East, who currently facilitate the Spennymoor Youth Council. Funding for the Youth Council has now come to an end, and Success are again requesting financial support currently from Spennymoor Town Council and the Spennymoor Area Action Partnership to secure the future of the Youth Council for a further 3 years. It's my belief that this council should be supporting a Youth Council project, and I strongly believe that there will be substantial benefits to our young people in community involvement such as this. An opinion of some members is that the cost of running the Youth Council will be significantly lower if the Youth Council was voluntarily led or indeed facilitated in its entirety by the young people themselves. Members have also previously discussed concerns regarding the levels of engagement that the Youth Council have had with the Town Council, and that they would like to see greater involvement and cross-working going forward. It's for the Council today, Mr. Mayor, to decide where we go with the future of this project.
Councillor Lawton.
I don't know if any of you know how youth councils are supposed to be run by a British Youth Council and the whole set-up. A number of years ago I actually set up youth councils down in Manchester, and they were set up and run by the local town councils. There was no kick organisations or non-profit organisations run them. They were actually run by a facilitator from the Town Council. The British Youth Council have different leaflets. I've put copies of these on the centre there if you want to have a look at them. I think it's really important that as a Town Council we have, an impact on our young people. We talk about investing in children, and I think that's, it's about the Youth Council, it's about investing in our young people, and not just the ones on the Youth Council, but for them to be able to go out and then get the other young people in the town involved in the likes of community projects. So, maybe, I don't know, for example, Spennymoor Community Centre might want painting, so the Youth Council would take that on board. As young people, they would have to action plan it, organise it, fundraise, get the money for the painting of it, go to the youth club, and then they are then engaging the other young people within that community to give something back to the community. But it's also about giving them transferable employability skills, because all of the skills that they will use on a youth council, they can take forward with them into work, university, whatever it is they want to do. Like I said, it's all about transferable skills. The other thing I think as well is, I've been to quite, a few of them, and I've met with a lot of the youth council. And the young people of the youth council, I've got to say to you, are quite concerned about the way it is being run. They are, the British Youth Council, of which our youth council is a member of, has a manifesto. These young people should be debating this manifesto to feed back to the British councils and to us as the Town Council and to the County Council, which then goes to the Youth Parliament, which then gets carried on to Parliament. So it's about the young people of this town actually having a voice and doing things in the town. You can probably tell I'm very, very passionate about this. Having worked with young people for the last 15 years, it's important that we give them these opportunities to be able to keep our youth council going. I understand, that Success Northeast is brilliant and they do some brilliant work. I know by setting up, and I have contacted my ex-town council colleagues down in Manchester, when they set up a youth council, they don't necessarily need a budget. The youth council should be facilitated by a volunteer. The budget that they would get could be something like £500, and then maybe it's the cost of a yearly joining fee to the British Youth Council. But it's about the young people going out there and being part of our community and getting our other young people involved. I know that we've got projects running at Rosa Street School, Trinity Youth Project, things like that we can get involved in. I would like to say that we would, have a bigger input via the Town Council into the Youth Council and suggest possibly giving them £500 or, to start afresh with the AGM. That's my suggestion, and to get somebody in there voluntarily to run it, rather than give money to Success Northeast.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Councillor Gildard, I wasn't quite sure exactly what he was recommending. Have I missed it, or have we got a paper on it? Because I'd like to see what the recommendation is saying. There was two people saying we had concerns, and I'm just wondering exactly what are the recommendations. I believe in general with everything that Councillor Lawton said, but the words concern came up a few times, and I'm not quite sure what the recommendations were, and I would like to have a paper to fully understand so I could vote.
Mr. Mayor, I haven't made a recommendation as such. What I wanted to do was open it up to the chamber and get the views of the members.
Chair, thanks very much. After listening to Councillor Lawton, the Mayoress there on this particular subject, I think everybody can actually say how passionate Councillor Lawton is on this subject. He's obviously done a lot of homework and a lot of research on what really should be done with this Youth Council. And I believe, to be quite honest with you, I think the discussions and various things that are there for the Youth Council, that it does need someone to take direction of this Youth Council. And obviously, Councillor Lawton has really done a homework on this. I'd like to put forward, to be quite honest with you, that Councillor Lawton is actually becomes a facilitator elected by this council to take on board the direction of the Youth Council. So therefore, I'd like to make a recommendation that Pat Lawton, Councillor Lawton, actually becomes a facilitator in the Town Council.
I'd like to second that, Mr Mayor.
Like to come in, Councillor Lawton?
Well, I mean, obviously, if that's accepted, then I'm quite happy to take that on.
Councillor Thompson?
There was no mention in the recommendation of funding. Are you recommending that we fund it for £500 or? I mean, currently, how much do we fund them with anything? I know in the past we have given some one-off payments. Are we?
Councillor Gallagher?
The average running costs for the Youth Council are about 7,000 a year, and then the proposal that the proposal to bring to the Town Council in the AP at a future date would be for that I think it's £7,740.
So if I just assist, in the past, the Town Council have made a section 137 grant payment of £2,000 over a 3-year period, so we have in the past funded up to £2,000 a year over 3 years. We've had £6,000 off the Town Council over a 3-year period in the past from 137.
So,
Councillor?
Sorry, just as another answer to your question, Councillor Thompson, is for me, again, I'm going back to the young people. Okay, you know, I'll get the young people to the section 137. It's about their learning, their debating, their negotiating, writing things, so they're taking that forward. I'll get them to do that, to bring it back to the council, so they're learning again, you know, so they can come in and discuss it. And maybe it might be for £500, but it might be for £800. Yeah, so, like I said, because they need to join the British Youth Council Corporation again. So I don't think it's such we sort of putting any recommendations forward with regards to money to be given right now, but about how involved are we going to be as a council to facilitate the running of the youth council, and that will then come from them.
Chair, I'm quite happy with the recommendation as well. I'd just like to make one comment. Even the primary schools, and you did mention Rose Street, have youth councils. Somewhere in the recommendations you should, or maybe what the council ought to bring forward, that we should be looking to take on board the youth councils that operate from the primary schools as well.
I actually had Oxclose School Council in here 2 weeks ago. They came up and we asked questions and we had a debate in here. So that's part of I feel very strongly about that.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Anybody else like to comment? Well, the proposal then is that the council get directly involved in the youth council by way of a facilitator. It's been proposed and seconded. Are there any objections? All in favour? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a very pleasant one. It's the presentation of the plaque to the family of the late Norman Cornish. Representatives here. Very good to see you as well. Very pleased to meet you. I think you've seen this.
It's the first time we've seen it.
I've never held one before either. Can I do this?
Want to change it decision and then move it there?
It's not too much.
Well, that's every
Couple of words up.
it's great. That's great. And one more.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes,
I hope so.
Would you like to say something?
Yes, I would. Mr Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting us here tonight. I'm John, Norman's son, this is Mike Thornton, his son-in-law. And on behalf of the family, we would like to thank the Town Council and Durham County Council for joint funding this venture. It's really nice. I'd also like to thank Colin Ransom, the facility manager here, who did a lot of the coordinating as well to get this pension underway. But in particular, I'd like to thank Councillor Foster for doing the legwork and really working hard to get this pension completed. It was quite a difficult one. I believe on Friday there's an installation and the unveiling at 11 o'clock at Terrace. It was so nice for the family to see this on the wall where my father did all of his, well, the vast majority of his work, and it's so nice for the family to see that. Hopefully, along with other benches that are in the pipeline to do with my father's work in the area, that will be nice for the town folk as well. I guess the installation on Friday will be less problematic than it was for us as a family to try to crystallise a person's life into so few words. I don't know how many drafts, yes, but we changed it so many times, and I think it just about sums it up. So Patrick could read that later at your leisure. So once again, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Councillors, can I just say there are a number of other projects that are underway at the moment at various stages. At Beamish, we're looking at the feasibility of the Cornish Trail. We'll look at something similar up in Berwick in a couple of weeks' time. A prize, an biannual prize announced by Northumbria University earlier this week. So these are ongoing. Perhaps if we report back to Colin Ransom, we could maybe give you an interim report in about a month's time, rather than trying to guess what's happening. Okay? Thank you.
Finally, we have an additional item on the agenda, and this refers to a local charity called For Louis. Last year, they had a collection in Jubilee Park and raised £1,000 for the charity, which was after the families of stillborn children and the like. And they requested permission to do it the same this year. Sunday the 12th of April. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just work with this seems to be an ongoing thing now annually, and we should be supporting this as a council. It's quite a good event, and makes good use of our park, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. I would move that we accept the permission for this on an annual basis.
Okay. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And that ends tonight's Spennymoor Council